One of the most valuable tools that you can add into your squat training or just your leg training in general is a squat wedge. And what we have before you today is two different types of wedges. We have a single wedge and then we have the solo wedges here that are two separate wedges where you can change their orientation. Now, both of these are going to have the feature of improving dorsiflexion, so they're going to make up for the fact of lack of ankle mobility, and they're also going to add in the aspect of when you're on a wedge, you tend to be able to drive the knee further forward, which is going to put more load on the quad. So regardless of whether you are built to squat or getting to a full depth or full knee flexion is a challenge for you, both of these are going to make the squat more quad dominant. Now, when we look at the different benefits of the wedge, the one on the left here is going to have the convenience of being, it's a good wedge. It provides that dorsiflexion, and it doesn't require any more individualizations other than putting your heel on the wedge. Now, the solos here have the ability to not just give you dorsiflexion, but the ability to go with an open stance as well. What that allows you to do is to truly individualize the angle to what your feet are actually going to be based off of how wide you go and how open your stance is. That is going to be the best squat that you can get. So if you are buying these for yourself, you would want to have the ability to individualize that to your exact stance. So the solo wedge is going to give you by far the best squatting experience, the most depth, and it is also going to be the most applicable to training a full squat rather than just a quad dominant or cyclist squat, because you can train in an open stance. When you perform a really wide stance on the single wedge here, because it is just one plane forward and it's designed to help with dorsiflexion and driving the knees forward, it is going to want to continue to push the knees in that direction, which can challenge stability a bit and actually cause a little bit of a curve in or cave in at the foot and ankle. So if we're looking at what is going to provide the most stable and best squat, we're looking at this, but it does require you to then set up that. So if you're working with a team of athletes and you're just trying to improve dorsiflexion and you need to set up 5 wedges in front of racks, this is going to be more applicable in that team environment, because you can improve everybody's squat and you just need to make sure that you're not putting somebody that's doing a super wide like sumo stance squat on a wedge. If you're looking at maximizing your own personal squat, or you're doing this in a personal training setting, working with one individual at a time, the solos are by far going to put you in the best possible position for each individual squat. To illustrate the advantage of these two wedges, I'm going to let you see what they actually look like when we are squatting on them. So if Austin comes back here, two things I want you to look at here. One is the depth and the angles that he's able to get at both the knee and the hip. The other is actually where the bar is positioned in relationship to his body, because the bar is where you're going to be placing the load. If you are further away from the hip, it's going to be more hip dominant. If the bar is further away from the knee, it's going to be more knee dominant. And it's very important to periodize the types of squats that you are doing to be good at both those end ranges. That's really going to help you come out of the hole. So on the solos here, Austin's able to use more of an open stance, which is going to allow him to get more hip flexion. So if he goes down in this position here, what you're going to see is it's very easy for him to get to terminal knee flexion and then maximal hip flexion. He could even go deeper in that if he wanted to and sit into that squat without actually tucking, because he's able to flex at the knee. So like I said, that is the king for the full squat if I can individualize that setup. Okay, if he steps back onto the regular wedge, what we're going to do here from a safety and stability standpoint is I'm going to have him have his toes a little bit more straight forward. So if he goes ahead and he squats there for me, what you'll see is we are able to get to that knee flexion, but at this point in time, we're not able to get as much bend at the hip, so it's harder for me to get a really bottomed out full squat in this position. I mean, obviously this is a lower squat when we're talking about competition squat, like we are getting to parallel, but if you wanted to challenge the hips here, he would need to open his stance. So if he stands up and he opens his stance like he does on the solo wedges and he comes down, what you will see now is he is able to get a little bit more depth, a little bit more hip flexion. And this probably isn't bad with just the bar, in terms of the load. But if we were doing this heavy, which most of you guys here are going to be training this heavy, you're going to be training it dynamically, you're training it for carryover, what's happening now is his foot is on a little bit of a sideways ramp because his foot is angled out, but the ramp is flush this way. So it is not as optimal as being on the solo wedges. That being said, when you have athletes where you're just trying to get that extra quad development, you can bring those toes in and you can get a quad dominant squat. And then when you want to go hip dominant, you can put them back on the floor and focus on just getting the load on the hip with a flat foot.